preferences that are in here before we get going, just to kind of make sure that Ableton Live is working the same way for all of us. And these are just things that I recommend. Some of these I really recommend. Some of them I don't really care that much, like what you do. But I'll let you know how that is. This is the preferences. The preferences is Command comma on a Mac or Control comma probably on a Windows machine. Um, oh, Pro Tools. Yeah, yeah. I get it. Yeah, Pro Tools can act weird sometimes. But yeah, Ableton Live is usually more. It works a little bit more straightforward. Yeah, I agree. Um, so let's just go ahead and take a look at this stuff from like just kind of going down from the top over here, and just starting here with a look and feel. This sets up how Ableton Live kind of responds to you and how things work. By default, your permanent scrub areas are on. I actually recommend turning them off, but what this means when you turn them off is that if you want to play from a certain part, like the scrub areas are right up here, and I have them off by default because I'm just used to it, because that's how I used to use Ableton Live back in the day, and that's how it used to be. If I want to play from bar 9 with my permanent scrub areas turned off, I have to hold down my shift key to turn my cursor into like a little speaker, and I can hit play and it'll play it from that bar right there. So I can hit play and it'll play it. You'll notice how it flashes this little green light here. And the reason why it's flashing that green light is because it won't actually make the jump until it actually loops back around to the beginning of the bar. That comes back to that global quantize thing. But that's what your permanent scrub areas are. And you can use this for zooming in. If you click and drag up and down, you can zoom in like this. Or if you hold down shift, you can play from a certain part of the song. And that's why I keep them turned off. If you have them turned on, what happens is it's just always going to be this little scrubber thing, and then your magnifying glass is up here, which I like. I actually use my magnifying glass to zoom in and out more often than I use my scrub tools. So that's why I have it set like that. Again, I don't care how you have it set, but it's for me it works better like this. Zoom display. If you want to see things a little bit bigger, you can have it set as a different zoom, like a zoom 110, something like that. So this is something that I would often do, especially on stage, just to make it so everything's like really big and like in my face. I'll set my zoom to a different number. But if I'm in the studio at home, I just keep it set to 100%. It's fine. All this other stuff down here is like whatever. If you want to change the theme of Ableton Live, how it looks overall, it's right here. You can change it to different colors, light, mid-light, which is the default, mid-dark, which is what I prefer, dark. It's a little bit too dark for me, and you can have it set for Live 9, which is like this kind of colors here, very similar to these, but a little bit different. So I have mine set for mid-dark. That's why my colors on my screen probably look a little bit different from yours. You can set it up however you want. And then you can also go through and kind of tweak this even more. So I can go through and go to color intensity, change that, change the hue. So I can have it be green or purple or whatever, and have it go through like this. And you can set up your grid lines when you're in your, here. So if I go over here to this, we can set up so the grid lines are more intense, less intense, like no grids, really hard grids, like however you want to have it set. I actually don't ever mess with that. I just leave it set for 100%. Like this, and okay, good. Yeah, that's back to the default setting. So you can change, it's kind of cool that you can change things around and have it how you want to look at Ableton Live. Next up is our audio. This is quite important. The audio is where you set up your input and output devices. So if you turn on Ableton Live and it's not, routing to your proper sound card or whatever, you can go in here and change this stuff here. So I can go in here and change this to my external headphones or whatever it is that I want to change it to. So that's in here. I can set up my input device as a separate input device as well. So I can set this for my external microphone, external headphones. There we go. Buffer size is what you're going to want to change that if you're having pops and clicks and kind of issues. You might want to put that at a higher number. Otherwise, the test tone, you probably don't need to worry about that too much. That's like if you're ringing out a studio and checking things out for troubleshooting. Next up, we have our link, tempo, and MIDI. This stuff's actually quite important. The link we talked about already. The main part down here is really this MIDI section here. So whatever keyboard controllers you have connected up to your computer, it's going to set it up down here. And if it's a keyboard controller that actually works with Ableton Live to do Ableton Live stuff, it'll show up here as a control surface and allow you to do stuff here. Otherwise, it'll just show up down here as like a regular MIDI object, and you have to have track and remote turned on. If you're working with like a drum machine or something that's got like LFO, like MIDI clock, you're going to want to push the sync button as well. But for me, I'm just using a controller. It doesn't have sync, so I don't have that turned on. Track is for your keys. So for like different notes, pitches, stuff like that. Remote is for your knobs and faders. That's what remote does. So you want to make sure both of these are checked for any kind of like controllers you have turned on. Over here, takeover mode. Takeover mode is if I'm using a controller that's got like a specific low point and high point, it's not just going to jump to a different setting on that controller. It'll actually wait for me to go through the settings. So for example, I don't have a controller like that connected up right now. But if I've got my auto filter here, and you can see my frequency is way up high. If I have my knob is set for like down low down here, it's not going to change that frequency until I actually move my knob through that setting right now. That's what it's set for right now. And the reason why I do that is so it doesn't jump. Here, let me show you. Here, let me pull up a drum kit. Pull up. Let's see. Okay, so here we'll go with this one. And I'm gonna just I'm just gonna program some notes in. Got my kick. Make that louder. Is this one here. Put in my shaker hi-hat. There we go. Let's make it 8th notes. Oops. Come on, you. Ugh. Fine. How do I drag it straight across? It used to be you could just drag it straight across. I forget what I have to hold down to drag it. Nope, not that one. What is it? Oh, there we go. Option. So if I hit go. Cool, so I've got this here. If I put an auto filter on it, we got our filter here. And if I connect this up, let's say, for example, I got this one here. If I connect this up and I say Command M to set up my MIDI control, and I connect it to this knob right here. Well, if I move the knob down here, you can see it's not actually doing anything. Check this out on my screen. If I move the knob down here, see it's not actually doing anything, but if I move it through, it'll pick it up. And now it's controlling it. And that's what pickup means. Pickup means basically it's not going to control the parameter immediately until you actually scroll through that setting. So that's what that does there. You can change that so it scales, or it just does none. None will just jump. I don't like none at all. So if I've got this set like that, if I move if it's playing, and I move my knob, it's going to jump to the knob location where my knob setting is. And so that is kind of a problem, especially if you're on stage or whatever. And the other setting is scale. In scale, what it does is it moves the knob to kind of fit your position. So for example, if my knob position is down low, when I move the knob here, which is in the middle, it's gonna automatically move that one until it like catches up with it. So there you go. What I would recommend is using the value scaling or the pickup mode. Either one of those is fine. They're both smooth, which is really what you want. You want that kind of smooth thing going on. The jump one is not smooth at all. It just jumps to the right setting, so it's like you don't really want to use that one so much. Cool. All right. File folder. File folder is where certain things are set up on your computer. If you have an external sample editor that you want to use to get like more sample accurate editing going on, you can use that right there. If you can set it up right here. I don't have one set up, although I do have Adobe Audition on my computer. I don't really use it that much. I just do everything in Ableton Live. Your temporary folder where you want to put your temporary files and like recordings and stuff. If you're like recording stuff before you save a session, then it will put it into a temporary location. Max application, I've got Live Suite, so I just use my bundled version. I don't have Max for Live, or I don't have Max DSP, the full version. And then decoding cache is if you drag in an MP3 file, it'll automatically convert that to a WAV file in the background and it puts it into this folder here. If you are doing a lot of, like for a while I was using Ableton Live to do my DJing and stuff like that. It's a long time ago. And I was dragging in tons of like MP3s and stuff, and they were all just kind of going onto my hard drive, and I didn't realize what was happening. And I was wondering, why is my hard drive starting to get smaller? Why is so much space being taken up on my hard drive? And the reason is because Ableton Live was like putting stuff in the background, and so I was like, oh, okay. So that's where this all happens right here. For the most part, you can just kind of not worry about it, but if you want to go through and clean it up, you can hit the cleanup button and it will like get rid of all the decoded files, which will slow you down if you are using Ableton Live to DJ with. Library, where your library happens. If you have your library on an external hard drive, or if you want to put it on an external hard drive, a few of us like Randell, you and I have talked about your hard drive. You need to always have your hard drive connected up to your computer. And for, if you're running a hard drive that only has like 128 gigs of space, that's not really enough to have your libraries on there. So I would recommend putting my library somewhere else, and you could just drag your library onto an external hard drive and then just show Ableton Live where it is and where you want it to install as well. I just got mine on my internal hard drive because my hard drive is a terabyte, so I just keep it in there for this one because it's like 4 gigs or something like that, which for me is an acceptable number of space. But you do want to just be aware of this, and this is a good place to kind of find where that is. Over here's plugins. We did talk about this. Make sure you turn these on and off. If you install a plugin and you've got Ableton Live open, you have to hit the rescan button so it scans your plugins and will add in your new plugins. Down here where it says plugin windows, I turn off my auto hide. I do not like it to auto hide my plugins. Basically what that means is if I have auto hide turned on, if I'm using a third-party plugin, like let's say that I am using FabFilter, this one here, and let's say I'm using Pro Q3 on this one. Well, what happens is when I switch my channels, my tracks, it's going to pull up my different plugins, so I can only see one at a time. And that's not how I want to work, because sometimes I'll be listening to something on one track and messing with something on a different track. I'm listening to the other track as well, but I want to have both of them up so I can adjust them, like especially EQs and stuff like that. I maybe want to adjust my frequencies so they're kind of like offsetting each other. So I'll have my EQ open on both channels. And so right now the default setting is it will hide it when I switch to the other channel. This is good for live stuff, I guess. It depends on how you work. I don't like it though. So what I do is I turn my auto hide off here. And now what that means is I've got all my plugins. I can open up multiple windows on multiple different tracks, and it doesn't matter what one I have selected here. It's just going to work right. So that's that one there. How that works is and I think that's a really important one. Up to you how you want to use that, but I recommend turning the auto hide off. Multiple plugin windows, yes, you want to have that turned on. And then auto open the plugin windows, up to you. Basically, that means that when you put a third-party plugin in there, it's going to automatically open up the window for it. This is, since I've been using more macros a lot, since Live 11, I've been using more macros a lot more. And I kind of don't love it, but when I'm just using a plugin by itself, I do love it. So I keep it on. But if I'm using an instrument group that has like a lot of third-party effects, it pops up all these things on my screen, and I have to kind of like turn them off, which is kind of annoying. Record, warp, launch. This is where you set up how you're going to record stuff in. If you're on a Windows machine, it's going to be Wave. If you're on a Mac, you have a choice, AIF or Wave. I recommend Wave because Wave is the like more universal than AIF. AIF is great, it's cool, you can do some cool stuff with it, but they sound the same, and Wave is a little bit more, like I said, universal. Bit depth, 24-bit, always. Count in, if you want to have a count in, you can set that up there. You can also change your count in over here under the metronome. Click on this little button, and you can give it a count in right there. It's the same exact thing, it's just in two different locations. And then we have exclusive. Now, I have it set up so I can arm multiple tracks for recording at the same time. So I have the arm set. I have it set up so it doesn't. Sorry, the opposite. It doesn't do multiple tracks of recording at the same time. So for example, when I go in here, I set this little record button here. And it won't record multiple things at the same time unless I hold down my command key. If I hold down command, now I can record multiple tracks at the same time. But if I just hit it, it's not going to record multiple tracks at the same time. The solo button, however, I like it to be able to solo multiple tracks at the same time, and I can hold command to deselect all my solos. So I have my preferences set up like this. My exclusive arm is turned on and solo is turned off. I do work in studios where it's the opposite, and I just, whatever. It's just you have to get used to it a little bit. It doesn't take that long. It's not a big deal. But I have that set up like this. Clip update, the default setting of 16th is fine. Record session automation in. I like to have this set for all tracks. And when I do that, it means that I have to really pay attention to this button right here. That button there is my automation arm, automation record, basically. So if I have this turn on and I start moving some knobs, it's going to start recording automation. So I have to be aware of that. But I prefer that I don't have to have anything record armed. And actually, when I'm recording automation, I usually turn off my record arm on everything because the way it works is a little bit weird. So I have it set to all tracks. It's up to you how you want to do it. Start playback with record. I don't really use this. I have it turned off. In Pro Tools, there's a couple ways you can set it up. So I use it kind of both ways, where I can have the record button and I just hit the play when it's time to go. This one here, you can't set up multiple ways. You have to either or. What this does is it means that as soon as I hit the record button, it starts playing. So that's what that does there. I don't love having that turned on. I like to have the record arm, and then I can hit the space bar, and I can get my head together before I record and stuff like that. So I like to have it turned off. It's also old school Ableton Live setting. Warp and fades. I have all the stuff is default except for create fades on clip edges. I turn that off by default. Launch mode, default. I think all the stuff is pretty much default. There may be some of these. You can mess with these if you want, like see what these different settings do. It's not really something you need to worry about right now, is this one being on or off. It's a good setting for like live on stage. I have it turned off by default. Start tempo with tap tempo, start playback with tap tempo. I turn that on because it's more of an old school way of Ableton Live working. When you tap the tempo in, it's going to start playing automatically. So I like that. Draw mode with pitch lock. will lock. Oh, that's what I was doing earlier. I was like trying to draw it across, and it will automatically lock the pitch in. But you can hold down one of your keys. Which one was it? I think it was Option, right? Yeah, you can hold down the Option key, and it will lock the pitch in. So you can have that preference on or off as you see fit. And this last one here just shows you how much stuff you have authorized with Ableton Live. So that's the preferences.